A South African gay couple, Theo and Christo Menelo, made history recently by being the first same-sex couple in the country and possibly the world to father triplets. And international and local media became very interested in this surrogacy success story. To unpack the world of in vitro fertilization and surrogacy, I am joined by Dr. Merwyn Jacobson of Vitalab. He's here to explain the whole process to me and raise, maybe address any ethical questions if there are any. Firstly, let's talk about this in vitro process as well as surrogacy. How does it work generally? Because it's not unique to this couple, right?
No, not
it
at
becomes a story because it's a gay couple, and we'll talk about and the fact that it's triplets that were born. But generally speaking, what sort of people come to you for consultations and advice?
In vitro fertilization is a technology which is this year 38 years old. Louise Brown was born in July 1978, and she was the world first IVF baby. Since then, the technology has expanded dramatically and now provides a very critical part of the fertility procedures available to couples who are suffering from infertility. That group is 1 in 6 couples, approximately.
Which is quite substantial.
Massive.
Yeah.
16% of the population. And not all of them require IVF, but those who do would benefit because it is probably the most efficient technology available to achieve a pregnancy. How is it performed? Well, to make it very simple, we collect eggs from the woman, and this is done after stimulating her ovaries with medication. That medication is either tablets and injections or injections, depending on various circumstances. The eggs are collected with an ultrasound procedure, and then sperm is introduced, having been appropriately prepared. Sperm is introduced to each egg to fertilize the egg. Then an observation process occurs in a very refined, sophisticated, controlled laboratory environment. And generally, a few days later, in good laboratories, about 5 days later, an embryo or embryos are selected to be replaced into the woman. So that's the basic process, made very simple.
So, and which should be, after this long, let's regard it as routine procedure.
Very definitely. In a good fertility unit, it is a standard procedure.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we are talking about a gay couple here, right? And so what you've just explained would be something that happens between a couple, man, woman.
Correct.
But in this instance, there's now the additional element of surrogacy.
Well, the gay couple needs a womb, so surrogacy now becomes the obvious answer.
Sure.
As it happens, our practice, Vitalab, was the first practice in this country to provide a surrogacy service with the Zanine triplets in the late 1980s, where we needed a surrogate for a woman to have a pregnancy. So we're very well versed in the technology.
If you can stick to just explaining surrogacy, how it works.
How it works,
yeah,
sure,
before we go to the gay couple,
Absolutely. So the surrogate supplies the uterus. That's the bottom line. It's as simple as that. It's rent a womb. But the law is very clear and very precise that the surrogate is providing a service for the commissioning couple.
Yes.
And I use that description because then you can take away the element of whether it's a homosexual or a heterosexual couple. It's the commissioning couple.
Yes. So and one thing that we must clarify up front is that the egg that is fertilized does not belong to the surrogate mother, right?
No.
It comes from somewhere.
As a general principle, the egg does not belong to the surrogate.
Right.
But so it either belongs to the female in the heterosexual couple, or it is a donated egg which can be acquired from an appropriate egg bank from in a homosexual situation.
Okay. So now, in the context of the homosexual couple, what would have happened here? So they would have acquired an egg from somewhere?
So the first thing is that the couple has to go through a very stringent, carefully defined legal process to commission the surrogate. There are various consents that have to be undertaken by the commissioning couple, by the surrogate, and if the surrogate is in a relationship, by her partner.
Okay.
Everybody has to give consent to the process. Everybody has to be evaluated, besides the surrogate's partner, obviously, at a medical and psychosocial level. And then an application has to be submitted to the Supreme Court for approval of the process. And this is very clearly and well defined. And until such time as the court approves the process and approves the circumstances into which the child will be, in this case children, will be delivered, one cannot commence any form of treatment. It is not legal. So that process has to be very carefully, very specifically, very deliberately, and very comprehensively dealt with and submitted. Then the court would give permission, and the surrogate is now available to provide the service of the womb. The commissioning couple, in this case, would have to select eggs, and they would do that from a known or an unknown donor. Ideally, donated eggs should be anonymous. And then, as they did in their case, the eggs would then be divided into two groups. One group would be fertilized from one of the partners, and the second group would be fertilized from the second partner's sperm.
Okay.
And then the IVF process would occur in the laboratory. The donated eggs would be fertilized, the embryos would be monitored until they'd been appropriately developed, and then one of each, as was originally planned, would be selected to be put into the surrogate's womb, which had been appropriately prepared medically, so that the lining of the womb was ready to receive the embryos.
Okay. Just to reiterate the point, so the surrogate womb would not be from the same where the eggs were taken from, were donated from, right? So this would be a third party.
As a general rule, that's exactly a third party.
Okay. So then, in the instance of this gay couple, 2 embryos were...
One from each sperm donor.
Okay. Then was inserted into the womb of the surrogate mother, right?
Correct.
Okay. So meaning what was expected was what? At least twins?
We'd like a pregnancy.
Yes.
We can't guarantee a pregnancy.
Yes.
So we have a choice.
Yeah.
Nothing, or 1, or 2.
Okay. So it was just to make doubly sure, right? That any of those eventualities, but ideally 2, I suppose.
Ideally, they would like one from each of them. Yes.
But we ended up with triplets
3.
here. So what happened?
All right. So let's talk a little bit about twins. There are 2 types of twins, essentially, that we are commonly exposed to. Those which we call dizygotic twins, which means 2 eggs are fertilized. And there you can get a boy and a boy, or a boy and a girl, or a girl and a girl. Those are very common. Okay. They're what we call non-identical twins. The other group, the much less common group, is called monozygotic twins. And there a single egg is fertilized, and in its process of development will split to become 2 pregnancies. Those are monozygotic. They come from one fertilized egg, and they split to become 2 individuals.
Right.
And those are, as a rule, identical. They're the same sex, and they look the same. Okay? There's the monozygotic twins. Very much less common. And the incidence in the general population of monozygotic twins is about 3 per 1,000.
Okay.
That's the general sort of risk.
Yes.
And this is what happened here. They put back 2 embryos, one of which split, a 3 per 1,000 risk, and that pregnancy continued simultaneously. That creates a very high-risk pregnancy. Obviously, triplets are very high risk and puts the surrogate at a disadvantage. But these issues theoretically should have or would have been discussed with her prior to any consents being signed.
And now the triplets have been born, right?
They've been born.
And they are now going to be put under whose care? The gay couple now?
By law, they are the gay couples. And this is very interesting. Our Children's Act changed several years ago.
Yeah.
Initially, in the process of surrogacy, the surrogate had to give up the child for adoption, and the commissioning parents then had to adopt the child. In terms of the new Children's Act and the law, the children automatically are the children of the commissioning parents. And all the surrogate mother does is carry the pregnancy. She has no rights.
Now, this particular case that we're talking about, incident, it's very rare, I suppose, or has it happened anywhere in the world?
I can't tell you off the top of my head what the literature would say, but my current reading would suggest that nobody's come out and said, yeah, we've also had one of those.
Yes.
We might find that.
But just out of interest, because I can imagine the surrogate mother carrying, the unborn baby in the womb for 9 months, might develop a bond with the child and so on.
Absolutely.
Doesn't that create complications just away from the law, but just from a natural, ordinary human point of view?
This is
that
one
people
of the...
say, look, I'm not handing over the child.
This is one of the reasons why the individual involved has to be very carefully counselled and evaluated from a psychological point of view. And she has to be made very aware that by law, she has to give up the children to the commissioning parents. That bond exists. And during the process and in the relationship that develops, the commissioning couple might well allow her access to the children because of this bond. I mean, she carried them and she felt them and she was aware of them. And she, for want of a better word, suffered the pregnancy. Okay. So it would be an arrangement between the commissioning couple and the surrogate mother.
All right. Well, it's a very interesting development, relatively new. And over time, I'm sure it's going to be looked at very closely, people looking at it from a religious point of view, ethical and other points of view.
Very definitely.
But,
as they did IVF 38 years ago.
Exactly. But from your point of view, in the scientific community's perspective, from a scientific, what's your regard for what happened here? How do you view it, in other words?
The process was undertaken correctly, ethically and professionally. There's no question about it. As you point out, there might be moral views, there might be religious views, there might be social views, but from a scientific point of view, it was carried out correctly. One issue that one could be, if one wanted to be argumentative, take issue with is the fact that they put back 2 embryos. Because straight away you create a risk of a multiple pregnancy, and that increases the risk both for the mother and for the pregnancy. But other than that, I think technically the process, to the best of my knowledge, was undertaken correctly and well.
Dr. Merwyn Jacobson, much appreciated.
My pleasure, Mr. Modise.
And he's the fertility specialist with Vitalab, Dr. Merwyn Jacobson, who spent time with us here explaining this interesting story of in vitro fertilization and surrogacy, because those are the 2 key issues that emerged from the triplets that were born, fathered by a gay couple.